two, one. Hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I have to say that I was pretty honored to be able to tell somebody that I took my business from $0 back in the day and grew it to 10 million before I sold it. And then I find this guy that goes from 0 to 20 million. So he has to one up me on that. And he did it in 3 years. And I'm like, man, that is crazy. I'm like, I got to get this guy on my show. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Jeff Cohen. How are you today, sir?
I am great. Thanks so much, Dave. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Absolutely. So you are CEO and founder of C-Level Roundtable. So tell us, what is C-Level Roundtable?
So, there's a lot about me that went into C-Level Roundtable, and the genesis of it is really all of the negative things that happened in my life. And thank you for creating the environment of positivity around my story. But I really want people to get, it's not the great positive things that happen that make the difference for other people. It's how you go from the deepest, darkest hole that you've been in and come out of it, and all that struggle and all of the things that you've learned and climbing up the walls to get to where you can actually stand on your feet solid again. That's what C-Level Roundtable evolved from. I had tremendously successful business. We grew from nothing to 50 people in a technology company, working with Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies in under 3 years.
Wow.
And in that period, I learned a lot. And then 2007 hit, and all of our clients said to us at the same time, Jeff, we love you guys. You're amazing. You're fired.
But yeah, exactly. You're fired.
And
wow.
I really personally went into a tailspin, Dave.
Sure.
I became very depressed. I ran away from every relationship that I had. Employees, customers, family. I sat and watched Star Trek on the TV for 8 hours a day. My ex-wife at the time, she was my wife, and she would leave in the morning and come home after dinner. No one wanted to be around me.
Sure.
And what it really took to get out of that was a journey. And so C-Level Roundtable is the apex of that journey. And I spent a lot of time going through the negative stuff. We'll talk maybe a little about Shark Tank and how I got there today. But in 2013, I took a program called the Team Management and Leadership Program, which was a 2-year program really designed to have you inspect yourself and really look at integrity in your life and accountability.
Sure.
And I realized those two things were way out. And I knew it was like that in a lot of businesses that I had worked with along the way. And I got 50 CEOs and entrepreneurs together, and we started looking at what was not working in our business. And in that year-long period we did that, I identified the number one thing that doesn't work in business today. And I'm not surprised to tell you, it's also the number one thing that doesn't work in life today for most people.
Sure.
People all have a different definition of effective communication. And what that looks like is something different for everybody. So C-Level Roundtable was the apex of that journey. And I've been building the methods and the processes to help organizations and their people understand when and how communication is working and not working, how to be aligned, and how to manage when trust, that little pesky thing called trust, keeps falling out.
Yeah.
Wow. So I know that was the dollar answer for the nickel question, but
yeah, no, and it opens up a ton of stuff. So who knows where we'll end up with this information today, but I want to kind of go back to this 50 things. So you had 50 entrepreneurs, business owners, and you found out from them what they're struggling with. And you said the number one thing was effective communication. That's what I heard. I just want to make sure that that was accurate.
Oh man, you're doing it. You're communicating effectively. Yay. We do that with our 1-year-old. We have a foster to adopt daughter. She's 14 months.
Okay.
We just keep going yay and clapping.
Yeah, just clap every time, right? Wow. Well, good. Well, I'm glad that I got that right. But I mean, it seems so simple, and it was crazy because I travel around the country and talk about communication. And I had a guy come up to me, Jeff, after one of these 10 tips to better communicate trainings. And I said, he comes up to me and he says, Dave, I got to tell you, he says, I didn't learn one thing from you today. And I'm just like, oh, I mean, fortunately, I was able to recuperate. It didn't turn me into a tailspin, and it made me realize one thing. And I asked him, I said, well, that's cool. I said, the question really isn't what did you learn? The question is, how many of these tips are you actually putting into place right now in your communication? And then all of a sudden the light bulb went on, right? And I think it's unique. All the training that we go through as entrepreneurs, we always are looking for the newest, latest, greatest, shiny thing. And for me, it always kind of gravitates back to communication. And, the way I say it is, how effective would this podcast have been if I would have started in a language that you didn't understand? No,
it's perfect.
And that's where it's like, my gosh, that's effective communication. We're talking the same language. That's the starting point. So I'm glad that, I mean, as sad as it is, I'm glad that was number one on the list, so that hopefully people start addressing it.
Well, it's really key and critical because, as I was writing my book, Countable, I identified some things in my life that worked and didn't work, but I uncovered my number one trigger. And it's right there in chapter 1. The chapter is called Grand Theft Auto. And it's about a time I stole a car, but you can go to my website and download it if you want to read that. But the key thing that I learned was inside of getting triggered, which we all do and we all cause, it's identifying when that happens that either has you be able to have an effective communication or not. And so a lot of the stuff that I wrote in my book, in fact, the whole book is about how my life works in business, right? It's just every time I do something for my business, I get something out of it for my life. And I want to just share one thing with you about triggers and about effective communication. It's just a short story, but it's really, I think, points out how every time you communicate, ineffective communication is possible. So there I was with my daughter in San Diego, in fact, where we were visiting some friends and staying with them, and my wife and her friend were going out that night. So I went out with my friend. He has a 7-year-old daughter. I have a 1-year-old. We put them both in the wagon and we start pulling them off to dinner because it's a short walk. And we have a great dinner. We get back in the wagon. We're going to frozen yogurt. We're pulling up at frozen yogurt. I turn my head to look back and I see my daughter standing up, holding on for dear life with tears in her eyes. I had my friend stop and I picked her up and I comforted her. And then I put her back in the wagon. I turned to the 7-year-old and I said, "Hey, honey, I'm just curious. Did you notice that she was crying like that?" And she said to me, "Yeah, I told you." And okay. I said, "Hey, I have a request." "What?" I said, "Well, if something like that happens and you tell me, could you make sure that I answer you in the future?" And she said, the famous 2 words we all use today: "Got it." Then she went back to her video game and started playing again.
Sure.
And I said to her, "Hey, honey, I'm just curious. I'm not trying to be a dick or anything, just curious. What'd you get?" And I watched her for 15 seconds do nothing. She stopped moving her fingers on the keyboard. She was thinking.
Yeah.
And then she looked up. All the neurons in her brain connected. And she looked at me and she said, "You want to make sure that I hear you answer me if something happens. And my heart just like grew 3 times its size.
Yeah.
She really got it.
Sure.
But here's the thing. About 2 or 3 weeks later, we went back. And she went to take my daughter to play with her friends. And I said to her, hey, honey, do you remember that thing I asked you about last time we were together? And she goes, you mean where you want me to make sure that I hear you if I say something to you and you respond?
Wow. Yeah.
I'm telling you, Dave, like,
That's good.
we don't do that in our lives enough. And it's
Right.
just being curious
Yeah.
about where someone else is in the moment. Now, with her, it was a video game, but at work, it's a customer. It's an activity you're doing. You're in the middle of something else. And then what does your boss do?
Yeah.
They say, hey, Jeff, where's that thing I asked for a month ago? And
Yeah.
now you're back on your heels and you've got all this defensiveness building up and you want to protect yourself. And I promise you're going to waste 20 or 30 minutes with that person because they're going to make sure you know exactly why they couldn't get it done. And that doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Isn't it crazy today how hard it is for people in general to take responsibility for something? I mean, whether it's the government or it's leadership or whatever, it's like, man, you know, the only people that like ever fess up are like the weathermen or weather women, meteorologists, you know, because they know it's like, I don't know, I got a 50-50 chance of it being right, you know. But I mean, in life, it's crazy how, like you just said, you know, you approach somebody and ask the question, and rather than them going, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, it slipped between the cracks, whatever, it becomes this whole, you know, litany of excuses and things like that. And then it just becomes like this elevating, you know, I'm going to tell you this and you're going to tell me this, and it just keeps getting worse. And I just feel bad in communication because it never even got off the ground right. You know,
Well, you know, it's
like you
really
just said.
great. It's really great when you say those things, Dave, because what you're really pointing out is we live in a culture where everybody wants you to be accountable.
Right.
And the
Yep.
reality is that accountability in the workplace is dead. It's a model that does not work except for one person. And that one person is you, the CEO, you, the entrepreneur, you, the business owner.
Yep.
Everybody else on your team is someone you are enrolling in taking something on. It's just every time we do that, there are some really important mistakes that get made. And the number one mistake that gets made is we go to interview people for a new job, or we're enrolling a new business partner and being our partner, or whatever it is. And they want to help, or they want the job.
Yeah.
And they are really good at doing whatever it is that they do. You like the DISC test, I do as well. I also like StrengthsFinder. I put those findings together to come up with what are the strengths that people have, what are they good at, what do they love doing.
Right.
By the way, do you know what you call it when you have an employee who's able to say they have those 3 things?
I would use the word engaged, but what word do you use?
I would say it's their dream job. And for you, it's probably your dream employee.
Sure.
Because the odds they're going to leave shrink considerably when they love doing what they're good at.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
And the reality is that we go through the interview process with them, and then we say to them, we think you're great. We really would like to hire you. So the carrot's there. And then we say things like, by the way, can you do the dishes and the laundry for us?
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
And we've just taken that A player and turned them into a B player because they're going to begin disappointing us from day one.
Sure.
And we don't look at our existing team to see when things shift in their lives on a regular basis, regularly enough to know this person doesn't really want to be a salesperson anymore. So they start underperforming.
Sure.
And we miss those things. They don't pop right out at us because we're doing what we do day to day.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point about the strength finders. So, you buy this strength finders book or you take the assessment online, whatever, and it tells you your top 5 strengths. But I think the interesting thing is you actually, that's just kind of like the start to me, because so you have this, like 2 of the ones that I have are connectedness and positivity. So but what does that mean, and what am I going to do with that? And I think that's where in communication we're so surface high, we're so like trying to get our information out so quick, and then I can like cross that off the list, that I don't think we really invest a lot of time in understanding, what is going on at that moment. Now, obviously, I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee doesn't need to have a whole 30 minutes of discussion about, right? But to your point, when you find somebody that enjoys what they do, why do you enjoy it? And how can we continue to motivate you? And I think that's why I love DISC so much is, it helps me understand how to manage somebody. It helps me to understand what motivates them, their ideal environment. I say all the time, if you put a rose in sand and water it once a month, it won't do good. Just like if you take a cactus and put it in soil and water it every day, it won't do good. But you flip those around and boy, they just thrive individually that way. So I don't know why it's not higher level of importance to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners to take such good care of their team. And I was just curious, in your 50 people that you talked to, where did team show up in that? And what were some of the things, if you can recall, that they, were talking about their team? Because it just seems that team piece is just going in the wrong direction today.
Well, here's the thing. First off, I really acknowledge what you said about DISC and StrengthsFinder. By the way, my top 5 include futuristic and strategic, which are number 1 and 2.
Okay.
Right. And my bottom, number 34, is adaptability.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, once I figure it out and I'm on the train tracks, there are no other train tracks. So,
right. Yep.
But to answer your question about where team came in, so what I found is that most leaders have a period in which they operate from being empowered, and then they operate from survival mode. And nothing good ever comes out of survival mode.
Yeah.
And many times nothing good ever comes out of being empowered. It's not about the leader. And both of those things are about the leader. Right? What's missing is empowering the team and creating leaders that create leaders. See, as CEOs and entrepreneurs, what we do is we start something, we grow something, we build a team. We are the most important people in our companies. And Dave, you did this. You sold a company. So
Yep.
You'll never, ever be able to sell a company when you are the most important person in it.
Right.
So if you're not empowering your team to take ownership and have that ownership mindset, you'll have a job the rest of your life and no one will ever buy your company. And if you're lucky enough to sell, you'll have a 5-year deal where you are working for them for 5 years and you will not get all of your money if you don't hit the milestones in your deal.
Yeah.
So, the whole point is empower others to empower others to empower others, and everybody grows. And then your company grows with you. It also grows without you.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's really good. I just think that, if you're not taking care of the team right now, if you're listening and that kind of it hit a nerve. I mean, that's why we're here every week, to hit a nerve. Because if you don't, then why even, if you're just learning or you already know everything you learn, it'd be like an hour of doing your multiplication table. It would be very painful. If you know everything from 1 times 1 up to 9 times 9, that would be a painful hour of discussion and training. But hopefully something here with us, today is like, causing you to think. And And I encourage everybody every week to try and jump outside their comfort zone, find something that we're talking about that really resonates. And if it's the team, then you kind of look at your team and wonder, how good am I doing? And if you think, if the immediate answer that you just came up with was, our team's fine, then I would challenge you to ask the team. Because, in Jeff's case, being all about accountability, that's why I'm assuming you wrote the book Count Onable. So kind of fill us in on what's the book about. And it just came out, so I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm anxious to get a copy. So tell me what the theme of the book is.
Perfect. So like I said earlier, accountability in the workplace is dead. It doesn't work. There are great systems out there like the entrepreneur operating system, and they're adopted by tens of thousands of companies. And the thing that doesn't work about those systems is they push so much on forced actions. That's really what accountability is. They say your people have to be accountable. What if they don't want to be accountable, or not for that?
Yeah.
You have no idea. What I wrote is the handbook. It's the process that I'm patenting, and the method, step by step in this book. By the way, super easy read. Every chapter is 3 or 4 pages. And you know that story I told you about my daughter and my friend's daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Every chapter has a story and a moral and a what did I get out of it?
Sure.
Right? So you can pick up the book and in 5 minutes get something today and then use it. The book Count Onable came out of the focus on other people. Accountability requires 2 people, someone to say you're accountable and someone to be accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And the someone that says you're accountable is actually responsible for managing the delivery of what you're accountable for. Since that doesn't happen effectively very often, I really looked with all of these people at what did work. And what was very clear is that when you take pride in something, you want the world to know you're great at it. That's Count Onable. Dave, you can count on me when we do this interview. I'm going to be on time. I'm going to be engaging. I'm going to share the deepest, darkest secrets I have.
Sure.
Right? And I am not Count Onable to do the dishes. And if you want me to wash them with a counterclockwise motion, I am even more not Count Onable for that. So the whole premise to the book is a simple, really simple process. Believe it or not, with working with 300 companies on this process over the last 8 years, I've been able to boil it down to a very simple process, so simple that a former McKinsey partner called me up after reading an early version of the book and said, Jeff, I want to write the software that manages your process. And we nearly have our first version of it done right now.
Nice. Excellent.
So, but Count Onable, it's all about the individual and having them step up and be empowered, where they have the confidence to tell you, I can take that on or I can't. And when they say they can't, you realize you've got to avoid putting them in the penalty box.
Yeah.
We do that way too often. This is not hockey, it's business.
Right.
Don't put people in the penalty box.
There's a great title to a book. This isn't hockey, it's business. Think how many people get cross-checked and tripped. And, oh my gosh, there's a ton there. But so I'm excited to be able to read the book. So if I understood what you just said, that there was about 300 companies that you were looking at in doing the research for the book. Is that what I understood from you?
Yeah, those are all clients.
Okay.
So those are all companies that I worked with. I have a business accelerator program called Next Level 90. And that is essentially what I've distilled in the book. In fact, in section 2, we've got this framework called the Trust Alignment Framework that shows you all of the components that are necessary so your team can be aligned and so that trust can exist. And when it goes out, you're able to notice that and bring trust back in, right?
Right. Yeah.
How important is that?
Yeah.
But the experiences of working with all of these companies, plus all of the ones I worked with in the agile software development world, helped me come up with this agile management method called Countable. And it helps companies do things iteratively. And it gives you this literally the step-by-step process. Like if you have a process that's not working for you, or you don't have a process at all, it's a great way to take a tiptoe in, then you can put your foot in,
Sure.
then you can get your whole team engaged.
Gotcha. Well, and so for me in the disc world, I'm a high D, high I person. So when I hear the word process, Jeff, my brain emits a negative, some energy, some chemical in my brain, because I really struggle with that word.
Okay.
I think of spreadsheets. I think of 42 steps. And then my head just, comes off. So I've had to replace the word process with path. Now,
That's really a great word. I love that.
Really different, because I own some land where there's woods, and we created a path through the woods. So I immediately go to that path, and it's peaceful. And, so it's just, as we're talking about communication, I think it's really detrimental to make sure that we're using the right words. Again, there's no right or wrong words, but for different personalities, if you say path, I'm on the path to discovery is way more successful for me than the process to whatever, because as soon as I hear that process word, I just, again, there's a chemical is released in my brain. I don't even know it's happening. I can't control it. It just happens. And there's some really great research out there about you making sure you use the right words. But I think I like the fact of you don't have to jump in, and buy stuff and invest hundreds of hours of training. I think when people talk about their different processes that they have, or an EOS, whatever, they feel like those are they can be life-changing, but very few people jump in to the water head first. They don't test the water. They just jump in. They don't even know how deep it is. Most people walk in and they start at their ankles, and then they get acclimated into their knees. And like you said, so I appreciate that you have that, that path. So that's pretty cool.
Well, thank you for that. I really acknowledge you for noticing like a word that complements what I do so well. And I'm going to borrow it and credit you for that, Dave. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's all, I'm honored. So listen, you mentioned Shark Tank, and everyone's kind of got their ears that knows what Shark Tank is. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, I got to hear this. So, I'm trying to find the right way to ask the question, but I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to say, how was it for you in the Shark Tank?
It was awful. Thank you.
Okay, on to the next question. Thanks everybody for showing up this week. So what, you were with the granola.
It was actually
company,
an amazing experience.
Okay.
So there I was on Shark Tank, and I was standing in front of all of them, and they have you stand there for 5 minutes getting pictures of you from like every angle, like,
yeah,
smiling, mellow, whatever. Yeah. Right. And then they just use them as appropriate in the piece. Gotcha. Right. So I was on the 5th episode in the first season.
Oh, wow.
By the way, if you watch the 6th episode, there's a guy named Jeff Cohen with a guitar company.
I saw that. Yep. Wow. Yep. So yours was Granola, right?
Granola Gourmet was the company. And it started out just because when my software company was closing, and I was helping everyone else get other jobs, I was shutting this business down. There was nothing I could do. And a friend of mine came over and he said, hey, can I have some of these bars to take to work? And before I knew it, I was selling energy bars to 20 TV shows and movies on the Warner Brothers lot. Crazy.
Yeah.
But my sister got involved when the real estate market was down, and that was what she was in, and got us into Whole Foods. And then found out about Shark Tank and got me the audition, And I got on the show. They loved me. The producers and everyone loved the story. They loved what we were doing. They loved the bars. And then I get on the show and Jamin John says, these don't taste so good.
Oh my God. Oh no.
And then Kevin O'Leary says, Jeff, you went bankrupt. You'll never get another bank. To me, you're radioactive. I'm out.
Oh my gosh.
Then Robert Herjavec, he's like the knight in shining armor.
Yeah.
He actually stopped the show and he said, Kevin, you can't say that to this guy. The measure of a man is not how many times you fall.
Mm-hmm.
It's how many times you get back up.
Right, for sure.
And they argued for about 15 minutes. They captured a minute or two of it on the show. But here's the thing about Shark Tank is that we didn't get investment. And frankly, it didn't do a whole lot to impact our business before it aired. Okay. And before it aired, we landed a deal with Safeway to put our product in 3,000 stores.
Wow.
And then the folks at Shark Tank heard about that and they said, well, we're going to do a success story. We're like, okay, great, come on up. And they filmed us producing 75,000 energy bars for this initial run. And they aired it, the very, very first success story that Shark Tank ever did in its history.
Oh my gosh.
So you don't have to get the money to get the accolades and the attention.
Yeah.
However, I will say this, I learned to hate the food business. I learned a lot about the food business. And it's one of the things that had me move from that into helping companies and organizations really focus on the communication with people. Because through that experience, like I was going through my divorce and my kids wouldn't talk to me. And I really, there were things in my life I wanted to shift.
Sure.
And like I was in survival mode a lot of that period and it sucked.
Yeah.
And the folks at Shark Tank really, were amazing to me. And the episode was great because, it was a real shot in the arm and helped to like bring me back.
Sure. Wow. How long? Because I envision that's a long process of doing all that stuff in front of them. I mean, the show's got you down to like, 10 or 15 minutes. How long were you standing there in front of them total? About,
I don't know, maybe 45 minutes or so.
Okay.
And then they cut it down to like 12 and they came out to the house and they filmed us and
okay.
And so they did the home package, right? It was a great experience. I don't think any of us had it, anything about it that was negative. I think it was just really fun to be on the show.
Sure.
And to make all the relationships that I still have, a lot of them today because of that.
Do you get to hang out with them at all before, during, or after, or are they very secluded, the Sharks?
Gosh, this was 2009. So I don't know what they're doing today.
Yeah. But
they had all of the whole first season was filmed the same day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. They might have filmed it over 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
But it was all, the continuity was all the whole season at once.
Sure.
And that little stage is inside of an enormous sound stage that they just built this stage and brought it in.
Sure.
So the hallway you walk down and all of that, it's inside an enormous sound stage. And but it was really great experience. I have so much positive stuff about that and really grateful to Kevin O'Leary for calling me radioactive and then taking credit for my success in the success story that they did a year later. That was awesome too.
Sure. So did you keep the Granola Gourmet business?
I ran it with my sister for about 6 years. After maybe 4, I went back to work at IBM because I needed to make money again. And I was just you can only work so hard for so little,
Yeah.
and that's something that I work with people to make sure they get.
Yeah.
And I realized it was time to move on. And so I did. My sister ran it for a couple more years, and I helped her get that it was time to shut down when it was, because the food business is very competitive.
Sure.
The margins are small, and the people in the big corporations that buy your product to resell it, they really, really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And unless you do,
Yeah. Yeah.
they will take advantage of that. And we weren't making money largely because they were making a boatload.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I watch it as often as I can, and I'm shocked when people are 1 or 2, 3% off on their offers, and they can't come to grips with how much of an impact those people that know what they're doing would have on that business, So did you have goals? I mean, when you went in to Shark Tank, did you have a goal in your mind that if this happens, then, I'm jumping in, or how did you kind of strategize up front?
Shark Tank was a really great adventure and event. And, at the time I was totally in survival mode when I went and did that show.
Sure.
I was trying to look good. I didn't really want to share that I went bankrupt.
Yeah.
I didn't want people to get that I had any issues. I wanted them to just see this great little company. We're doing killer. They should invest in it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Guess what, guys? Doesn't work that way.
Right.
And get yourself some support and coaching if you're going to be on a show like Shark Tank. Get yourself some support and coaching if you want to attract investment.
Right.
Better yet, get yourself some support and coaching if you want to have a customer.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Because people love doing business with the people they view as honest and reliable, that they know they can count on. Right? Be that person. Don't be this person that looks good all the time. No one trusts that.
Yeah, that's one weird thing about Kevin O'Leary. I shared a stage with him in Vegas, speaking at some convention, and even on Shark Tank, I've never heard him say, I don't know that, I'm not good at that, so there is probably that elite group that can get away with that. But for the most part, us, listening and being on the show, I think that vulnerability is really important, because if you're trying to build a team and you want your team to be vulnerable, but you won't be vulnerable as a leader, it's really hard to do the say as I do, not, or what is it? Say as I am, not as I do. Or
do as I say, not as I do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And chapter 1 starts out with one of the most formative moments in my life. I don't look good in this book. Let me tell you, I actually have a chapter on why I focus on all the crap that's happened in my life.
Sure.
Right.
I think it's only 3 or 4 pages. So.
Right. It is. But let me tell you, it's the other 13 chapters in there in the beginning about why I actually wrote the book.
Sure.
The things that formed my life, the things I screwed up in, the things I did not do well. By the way, I want you to notice, it's not the things that you didn't do well that I didn't like.
Sure.
It's the things I didn't do well. It's the ownership I take.
Right.
And I'm accountable for those things. It's just, I totally recognize people don't want to be held accountable today. It's got a bad rap.
Yeah.
The word accountable is something they hear on the news every night when someone's going to jail.
Right.
Right. There's no upside to accountability in companies. There just isn't. When you hear, I need someone to be accountable, it's not often you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. Now, I took a 2-year program that taught me where I really got to embrace being accountable. But for most people, what they want is they want to do something that's meaningful to them, that they can take pride in. That's what count-onable is.
Sure. Well, isn't it, and as we start to land the plane today, I just have a question on that. Isn't I feel like it's partially a matter of semantics, because business owners, I don't know what word you want to use, but business owners need accountability in the sense of they need somebody to help them with their direction. They need somebody to keep them pushed focused on that. So how do you explain that to somebody, I guess, Jeff, without using that word? Because I get that no one really, I didn't start my own business just to become accountable. That's the exact opposite reason. The only people I'm accountable for to are the IRS. So how do you explain this concept to somebody without using the word accountable, I guess?
Well, first off, there are trigger words, right?
Yep.
And a great example is you gave me the word path versus process.
Right.
Right. So when the word accountable gets used, people seize up.
Yep.
They don't want it. Now, like I said, there are other systems out there, a lot of great ones that a lot of companies use, but accountability as a word, what that does is it leaves people less than whole.
Okay.
Because it's usually someone forcing some action on them.
Yep.
Instead of them saying, no, I own that. I want to own that. This mentality of ownership that business owners want their people to have, it will never exist as long as there's forcing in the business and negative pressure. Sure. Your turnover will be higher and your cost of recruiting will go through the roof.
Gotcha.
Isn't it better to have people that can stand up and say, this is what you can count on me for? Sure. And when you identify, and I give a very simple way to identify when there are things that you can't count on them for, what those are and how to find those. Just imagine you found 5 things in your company this week that people are not countable for. But I promise you, if you create a unique job description with those 5 things, you'll find someone that loves doing the dishes, that loves doing the laundry, sure, that will fold it just exactly the way you want it folded and go counterclockwise on the dishes instead of clockwise.
Sure.
They will do it just the way you want. Why? That's their mission in life. It's what, sure, it's their Zen moment, right?
Right.
I love to chop when I cook. That's my thing, right? I just hate cleaning the dishes. So I'll chop, you clean.
Yeah, sure.
But companies don't do that enough. And a lot of it is just operating from survival mode or goals and objectives and milestones that are ineffective and not honed in for where you're at. They're honed in for, 5 or 10 years in the future instead sure, of the next 90 days.
Sure. Gotcha. Wow, that's awesome. I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate the fact that you are leading. It's always one thing in a group to have somebody say, hey, tell me your deepest, darkest secret, right? And nobody wants to go, who's going to go first on that one, right?
Me.
Yeah.
I'm always that guy. I'm like, I used to not be, but I am that guy today.
Yeah. And if you're the leader in your company and you're listening and you're not that guy, you're not that girl, you're not the one leading with that, whatever action that you want your group to take, this is what you can count on me for. That's a great way to flip the accountability piece. So I really appreciate that. What would Jeff Cohen's tip of the week be for anyone listening? Could be something we covered, could be something that we didn't, but if you had to give a tip of the week, what would that be?
Superpowers.
Okay.
Know what yours are. Give your people the opportunity to learn what theirs are, and then stop just being accountable. Be countable.
Awesome. And I think, DISC and strength finders are great tools to find your superpowers, because so many people that I run into, they're like, I don't know, what am I good at? Or I run into people in C-suites that are in transition. They want to find another job, or they even maybe want to switch industries. And their first question is, I don't know what I'm good at. How do I find that out? So there are tools out there to do that. So a great tip for the week is to find your superpower. It's so funny. We as humans, I thought of Superman and then I thought of kryptonite. It's like, oh my gosh, I go right to the negative, right? So I combat that for my life pretty regularly and that's, where I'm working on getting better for myself is combating that negative with the positive. You're looking at the superpower and I'm trying to find the kryptonite. I'm like, what's up with that?
Well, it's really perfect that you say, because one of my favorite authors, a guy that actually I published his quote about my book on the back of it right there. Mike Michalowicz, who wrote Profit First, Get Different, bunch of books that he's a super guy. We've talked several times, and I'm just so appreciative of him. But just to show you the difference, right?
Yeah.
His mission in life is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. My mission in life is to create entrepreneurial freedom.
Sure.
Two sides of the same coin.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Right. And they both are equally valid. You just get to choose something, one of those two will resonate with you.
Right.
Right. If you are feeling shackled to your business, like so many people do, how do I create entrepreneurial freedom?
Sure.
Right. And if I've got millions of dollars in debt and I need to get out of it, like I want to eliminate, my debt, then Mike's statement is what might be most attractive to you. Just
sure.
Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Wow, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. If you're listening today, again, like I encourage you every week, is rather than just click the stop button and go on to your next thing, something today resonated with you. And I just want you to do something with it rather than, just go on to the next activity and forget the last 45 minutes. Something resonated. I just encourage you to do something, reach out to somebody, double check on how you can be, what can we count on you for? Because I think that's a way more positive approach in your workplace. And Jeff, if somebody's listening and they want to learn more about you, they want to connect with you, what's the best way for people to do that?
Come to countable.com. And just for those that are listening and not seeing the book right now, it's spelled COUNTONABLE, countable.com. And come check me out on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Like I'm all over the social sphere.
Awesome.
And engage with us. Tell us, what are you countable for? What are you not countable for? Right? What are those things? Way more important than what you're countable for.
Sure. Awesome. And if you did get the book, we'd love for you to review the book. Jeff's trying to get to 100 here pretty quick. So, buy the book. And it's so, I know for me, when I wrote my book and I get, responses from people that read the book, it's so cool to, it's just rewarding for us as authors, to be able to read something that somebody wrote, and it takes a minute of your day and it makes somebody's day for a week. Sometimes just you're walking on cloud nine with that. So,
well, and not just that, Dave, but it's not just you and I that get a warm feeling from it. Think about all the people that you help with your review. When you say something relevant,
sure,
there's someone out there that's going to connect to that.
Yep.
And you'll make a difference for entire companies that you know nothing about today.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well said. Thank you. Thank you again so much for the work with the 300 companies, the 50 entrepreneurs, the Shark Tank. There's been a ton of information. So I encourage you, listener, watcher today, to jump on Jeff's website, start a conversation, grab a copy of his book. And, that way you don't have to worry about being accountable. You can be count-onable. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Can't wait to keep seeing more fun stuff coming my way from you.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, Dave. It's such a pleasure to be here. So grateful to have the opportunity to engage with you and your audience today.
Awesome.